Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
What's going on, guys? You're listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. I'm your host on Mondays. On Thursdays, Casey Foreman. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. A whole lot to break down and discuss. We finally had the draft we've been waiting for, guys. The 2020 NBA draft is over. So, of course, that is what I want to start out with today and break down and discuss. I'll give you guys an overall recap of what happened on Wednesday night and then give you guys also my reaction, what I thought of the first round, the top 10 picks exclusively. And then, here and there, some picks I really liked. And then in the second half of the podcast, second half of the show today, I want to take a look at, I want to continue to take a look at the NBA's off-season madness. It's been crazy, quite honestly. It's honestly just been happening also since Monday, but that's when trades have started being accepted. So, it's been crazy. I want to discuss the NBA off-season, all the moves we've seen, like Drew Holiday going to Milwaukee, like Chris Paul going to Phoenix, Dennis Schroeder going to LA, heck, Ricky Rubio, he's going back to Minnesota. So there are lots of moves to break down, lots of things to discuss in the world of basketball. This podcast, I should have said earlier, is brought to you as well by the GSMC Podcast Network, okay? So let's kick it off and let's start with the NBA draft, a recap, and then my reaction to what happened on Wednesday night, okay? So I want to start out by saying, man, was I wrong on a lot of picks on Wednesday night. I expected things to go differently, quite honestly. I did expect Anthony Edwards to go number one, so hey, I knocked that right on the dot, but besides that, I did expect a different outcome for multiple teams on Wednesday night. So again, boy, was I wrong on a lot of picks. I do have a lot to talk about and discuss, obviously. I want to talk about where I was wrong. Yes. Not just about where you were right here in this field. You also have to talk about where you were wrong. But not a lot of draft night trades, which I was actually pretty surprised about. I thought some trades, especially in the top 10, we'd see at least 2 or 3 trades in that top 10. I was wrong. I don't even think we saw one trade in the top 10. So I was wrong on that as well. We did not see a lot of trades in the top 10. We did see quite a few towards the end of the first round, towards the end of the 20 through 30. We saw some trades going on, around, I think around 19 when Landry Shamet got traded from the Clippers to Brooklyn. That's where some movement really started going in that first round. But overall, not too many, trades that went down. I do also want to say props, a shout out to every player that was selected. Their dream pretty much came true, unless you're Anthony Edwards, because then your dream was to play football. And this was kind of a backup plan B, and you're settled. I'll just go get drafted number 1 overall in the NBA. I'd rather be a football player. That's neither here nor there. Okay, I don't want to discuss that. A lot of people's dreams came true on Wednesday. Props to every one of those players that were selected, and to all of the ones that were not selected, don't worry, guys. You still have chances out there. Your dreams are not over yet. Your dreams have not failed. You have not failed. You still have many chances. Might not be a summer league or G League, but making training camps, maybe making the G League. You still have other options out there. Playing overseas, you still have options out there to make it. Just because you didn't get drafted on Wednesday doesn't mean you're not going to make it to the league. So props to all the players out there that did get drafted drafted. And just because you didn't get drafted out there doesn't mean your dreams are not still out there, are not still capable of being achieved. Like I said, though, Anthony Edwards, guys. Anthony Edwards, I expected that to go down. I expected that to happen. Minnesota, with the roster they have constructed, Anthony, in my opinion, was the obvious number one pick. Obviously, like I said, what I predicted, but also the best choice overall, in my opinion, for this Timberwolf, for this Minnesota franchise. They didn't need, there were rumors coming out, stories coming out that they were thinking about selecting Lamello Ball. They worked out Lamello Ball. He shot the ball super well, apparently, in those workouts as well, which is good to hear if you're the Charlotte Hornets, but I'll get to that in a minute. But again, they did not need a point guard. They just traded Andrew Wiggins, their former number one overall pick. They just traded him for a seemingly franchise all-star point guard in D'Angelo Russell, guy I'm pretty high on. So I was all aboard the boat of getting Anthony Edwards. You don't need another point guard, another ball-centric guard like LaMelo Ball. So they didn't need a point guard like LaMelo because of, I simply think that would have been a bad fit with D'Angelo Russell. They also did not need a center, obviously, because they're being led by their all-star, yes, the first-time all-star now after this past year, in Karl Anthony Towns. So, James Wiseman didn't make sense going number one to Minnesota either. So the obvious choice was for the T-Wolves to get Anthony Edwards, and I think now they have their three guys in Russell, Edwards, and Cat. They haven't had any time really playing together. Russell was just traded at the trading deadline last year, so these guys have no experience together. They're going to have to build chemistry as they go, but overall, keep building. You have your three concrete pieces, it seems like, so build off those three, develop those three guys, good chemistry between those three guys, and keep getting better. Okay, they just also traded for Ricky Rubio, an established point guard in the league, to help guide D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards, young guys like that, help get the ball to Karl Anthony Towns. So I like the move, getting back a guy in Ricky Rubio. I like the pick, number one, getting Anthony Edwards. Overall, I like the direction the Timberwolves are heading. What about the Golden State Warriors, guys, at number 2? Obviously, if you've been listening to me here at GSMC, you know that is a pick I've been pretty I don't want to say encouraged in, but pretty invested in. That's probably the word I should go with. I've been pretty invested in the Golden State Warriors and their number 2 pick. The whole idea of a team that is not rebuilding, a championship caliber team in my mind, with the second overall pick just fascinates me overall. Really like that Golden State team. So obviously, yes, I was invested with what their decision making, what the decision overall was going to be, and we know they end up drafting James Wiseman, the center from Memphis. So they kept the number 2 pick, despite me, saying time and time again that they were going to trade it. But in my defense, all things were pointing to them trading. They're a championship caliber team. They're not rebuilding by any six. It makes sense for them to go out. It made sense for them to go out and get an all-star caliber player if possible and contribute to winning right now. But it seems like that there weren't really that many pieces available. Okay, really, after Drew Holiday obviously goes to Milwaukee, Bradley Beal probably wasn't available from Washington, so Golden State, they couldn't beat the package Milwaukee offered for Drew Holiday. They don't want to settle for a guy like Victor Oladipo or trading it for a guy, I don't know, like Aaron Gordon, who they could get with their $17 million trade exception possibly. So no, they don't want to do something like that. They don't want to settle. So if you're not sold on everything else, and to a point that I want to get to eventually, they must be sold on that center and Wiseman. If they did not, end up making a trade, they must be sold on that guy. Or there really weren't that many options after all, because maybe a team like Washington with Bradley Beal said, no, we're gonna take our chances for the next couple of years and play it out. Thanks, we're okay for now. We're gonna get the steal in the draft, Denny Advija, at number 9, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I think that could have been the situation overall for Golden State. They thought they had more options. It turned out that they didn't. People were saying like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Joel Embiid, all those guys were going to be available and out there, but it turns out that they're not. And maybe the best bet for them with the number 2 overall pick was to take a chance on a guy like Wiseman. And maybe they've seen something that we haven't seen. Obviously, I haven't seen him play in over a year now. He played a couple of games at Memphis, but he hasn't played publicly in like a year now. So it's obvious for people like me to have doubts on them using the number 2 pick on a guy like Wiseman with the roster they have constructed right now, but they needed a center if they end up playing down the road a team like Los Angeles with Anthony Davis or a team like Denver with Nikola Jokic. So they're going to need a post presence, a dominant one, and perhaps Wiseman is that. Maybe they see something, again, we don't. He's been working out, he's been dedicated to making the NBA, to getting there over this past year. Obviously, only played a handful of games and dropped, and then again focused on making the league. So maybe they're seeing something that we did not see. My biggest takeaway from this Golden State pick is that they must be sold on this center from Memphis. They must think he's going to be able to contribute right away. In other news for Golden State, we got to talk about it. Sadly, I'm a huge fan of his, so this is just so sad of me to hear. I hope this is not the case. You're gonna know by the time you guys listen to this. Obviously, I'm recording this right as I'm hearing, but Klay Thompson has had a lower right leg injury, not related to the ACL injury in the left leg, but still a lower right leg injury right now. The fear is that it is an Achilles injury. Man, a big blow for Klay, a big blow for Golden State. Again, them getting this number 2 overall pick, having Wiggins now, still Klay or Steph coming back healthy, Draymond being healthy, thinking Klay coming back healthy, hoping being right back to contention next year. You've heard me say it here on GSMC. I was thinking, I was hoping, I still am hoping for Golden State to be back in contention next year, led by Steph and Klay. But it's not looking good, especially for Klay Thompson, the lower right leg injury. Hopefully it's not an Achilles, but things are looking like it is an Achilles injury. Klay looking like possibly to be out for an entire another season. A big blow for Golden State and for Klay Thompson. I'm super disappointed, praying for him, hoping for the best. But man, they can't catch a break right now, and maybe drafting a guy like Wiseman, not trading out for a veteran piece, is their way of saying, hey, we have older guys like Draymond, Steph, and Klay. Injuries are maybe going to be occurring more than ever now that they're getting older and older. Maybe now we get a younger piece like Wiseman to build off of going forward, just in case we continue to have these injuries to Steph, Klay, Draymond. So maybe this is also, hey, let's get younger, not just get older and compete. Let's also get younger and compete. So maybe that has a little bit to do with it as well. Not sure. Hoping for Klay, that the injury is not an Achilles, hoping it's not too serious, but all signs are pointing to Achilles, are pointing to Golden State not having the all-NBA caliber guard, all-star guard, one of the best shooters in the league in Klay Thompson for another season. A huge blow for them after, again, me thinking they were going to be right back to contention. I'm going to take a quick break in a minute or so, but quickly, hey, what about Charlotte with that number 3 overall pick? I said it on Monday. Don't mess it up, Charlotte. I've been saying it for a while now. Don't mess it up. You need a franchise point guard. I was super happy to see it. Charlotte, you did not mess it up. You did exactly what you needed to do. Super happy and proud to see. I don't know if Michael Jordan was the one making the move. I saw a report saying he's 100% ready to pull the trigger on Lamello if he's available at number 3. So maybe Michael, I'm guessing he had the overall, final say on the number 3 overall pick, obviously with his role. But I'm super glad to see that they did not mess it up. At number 3, they select Lamello Ball. They needed a franchise point guard, a face of the franchise, and they got exactly that. Super happy for Charlotte. They didn't mess it up. They got exactly what they need. with that number 3 pick in the 2020 NBA draft. I want to take a quick break, guys. When I come back, discussing more about Charlotte and other teams in the 2020 NBA draft. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, everybody. Like I said before the break, let's continue on discussing, breaking down, and giving you guys my reaction from Wednesday night, the 2020 NBA draft. There's a whole lot to continue on to discuss. But let's pick up right where we left off with Charlotte and the Hornets selecting Lamello Ball with the number 3 overall pick. Again, super happy they did not mess it up. Big upside to Lamello Ball, in my opinion. They needed a franchise point guard, a face of the franchise. They got exactly that with Lamello Ball. Upside is high for him. There was big talk leading up to the draft. I was actually pretty worried for the Hornets. I'm not a Hornet fan by any means, but I don't want to see them. I want to see everyone succeed. Okay, so I did not want to see them move up in the draft to select James Wiseman and not Lamello Ball, and that was exactly the story leading up to the draft. They were planning on moving up, not to select the guy they did, but to select James Wiseman. Ball, in my opinion, is the bigger name of the two, has bigger upside as far as being the franchise point, as far as being the franchise player, face of the franchise, and where the league is going. It makes sense for the Hornets to want to build around a player like a playmaking point guard instead of a post-threat center like Wiseman. So a playmaking point guard, a 6'7" guy who can spread the floor. Apparently is shooting the ball pretty well. He shot the ball well in his workout with Minnesota. So we know what he can do passing. He's an elite passer. He's going to be a great passer right away in the NBA. So a great move by Charlotte. That is the player you want to build around. Great move by Michael Jordan. And it's about time Mike and the Hornets made a good move in the draft lottery. So props to them. Maybe now is the time they start to move forward, and LaMelo is the piece that can start to bring them to some playoff appearances. We'll see. Don't want to jump the gun there, but I like the move by Charlotte getting LaMelo Ball. Big upside. Glad to see they did not mess that up. So a move I was very surprised about, okay? The Chicago Bulls at number 4. I was very surprised. They shocked the heck out of me with their selection. They selected Patrick Williams from Florida State. I'm not saying by any means, before I say anything, I'm not saying he's not going to be a good player, not going to pan out, not going to be a good player overall for the Bulls. I'm just saying, I was very surprised they go ahead and select a forward when they, forward/center, when they already have multiple people at that position like Lauri Markkanen, Wendell Carter Jr., who they just selected in prior drafts. They just selected with high picks in the lottery, people at Patrick's same position. So I don't like the pick unless moves are on the way for Markkanen, for Carter Jr. So unless they make other moves, this pick makes no sense whatsoever. Why would they overload at this position Okay, why simply overload at the power forward center position when players like Obi Toppin, Denny Adviha, Killian Hayes, all of those players were available when they go and draft Patrick Williams. Again, I'm not saying this is not going to be a good player, not going to be a potential all-star caliber player. I think he's got potential. I think he could be a very good player for Chicago even, but with all the players on the roster at that position, is he fighting for a starting role? Is he fighting to be on the roster? This does not make sense with the 4th overall pick when you already have depth at that role. It makes sense for me to go out and get a guy like Denny Adviha or even Obi Toppin, or even get another point guard like Killian Hayes if you're not sold on Kobe White. So this pick, in my opinion, did not make any sense. All of those players were available. I thought Denny made a whole lot more of sense in Chicago. I think they kind of blew it with the number 4 pick, in my opinion. Not saying again Williams will not is going to bust out or will not pan out. I'm just saying they already used picks on that position. So why do they continue to build depth at that power forward position when in the NBA we see the league, the game going further and further away from that position? So why bulk up at power forward? That is my only question for the Chicago Bulls. I would have got Obi or Denny Adviha, Killian Hayes, or Obi Toppin even. So don't get the move by them. Also, another move I was surprised about, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Another move I was very surprised about. At number 5, I thought a guy like Obi Toppin made a whole lot of sense. He's an NBA-ready guy. Not saying who they selected was not, but he's an NBA-ready guy. I also thought Denny Adviha would fit well in Cleveland, but they go ahead and use the number 5 overall pick on Isaac Okoro from Auburn. A very good player overall. I think he is a good fit in Cleveland, a very good defensive player. We'll see if he can develop an offensive game, but a very good player. He's going to buy in. He's going to develop. He's going to do all he can to develop his game. So I think he is a good fit in Cleveland, but I do think there were better, more NBA-ready caliber guys available, similar to the Bulls at that number 4 slot. I did not necessarily understand this pick. I thought Okoro would go in the top 10, top 12, obviously. But at number 5, I thought I saw Cleveland going in a different way, in a different route. And Okoro, though, in my opinion, still a good fit in Cleveland. We'll see if the pick works out and if he pans out better than an Obi Toppin, Denny Adviha, Killian Hayes. But overall, I was surprised by the Cavs and their pick at number 5. The Hawks, another team. Okay, let's continue on this streak. Another team I was surprised about. I really did think the Hawks were bound to trade out of that number 6 slot, maybe even trade down, but trade out of the number 6 slot. But however, they proved me wrong, similar to the Warriors making me look dumb, the Cavs making me look dumb, and the Bulls making me look dumb. Or maybe they just made bad moves. No. Either way, the Hawks selected center Onyeka Okongwu, despite earlier, if you remember, at the trading deadline last year, they traded for center Clint Capella, who has a hefty price tag attached to him. So they trade for a center in Clint Capella at the trading deadline, then use their top pick on another center. So will this guy be coming off the bench? Will he be at the power forward position? Will Clint Capella be at the power forward position? Are you moving Capella? Was that a pointless trade? Again, I don't get the move. He might be a very good player panning out. I really like him going into the draft. I thought he was a very good player. I still think he's a very good player, but you just paid and traded for a center. So I wanted to see them trade for a veteran-type player to help them win right now. Not saying Okongwu is not going to help them win right now. He could very well step in and be the best rookie in the draft as well as I know. Any well of these players in this year's draft could step in and be the rookie of the year. Who knows this year, right? But either way, I saw them taking a different route. I thought it made more sense to go out and trade the pick for a veteran piece. I thought maybe a guy like DeMar DeRozan could be available. Maybe even Victor Oladipo could be available. But they decide to get a center. So I don't get the move. I think, and if you don't trade the pick, at least trade a player, at least pick a player at a position you aren't already overpaying for. We don't know Clint Capella is being overpaid. At least I'm gonna get real. At least don't pick a player that you aren't currently overpaying for. Okay, you already have Clint Capella at the center position who's getting overpaid. Then you use the number 6 overall pick on another center. That does not make sense to me, unless similar to the Bulls situation where they already have depth at that position, unless a move is coming for Clint Capella, unless in the Bulls case a move is coming for Carter Jr. or Lauri Markkanen. And if they aren't, I don't get the move whatsoever. This is a wasted pick. They blew the pick this year. But I don't want to continue discussing the bad, okay? I did not just disagree with a lot of picks, okay? I also agreed with a handful of the top 10 also. So not just me disagreeing, I also agree with I should say, dare I say, I loved picks 7, 8, and 9. I loved those 3 picks. I thought they were great. I thought pick number 1 was great. I thought pick number 3 was great. And I loved, like I said, pick 7, 8, and 9. I thought they all made the perfect choice for their franchise moving forward. Let's start out with the Detroit Pistons. Detroit, obviously a team, after, trading Andre Drummond for only a second-round pick in Brandon Knight, so only having that to show for an all-star caliber player like Andre Drummond, that didn't necessarily pan out. Also, they traded for a guy like Blake Griffin, who seemingly is on the tail end of his career, or of his prime at least, at the end of his prime, if he's even in his prime at this point, I don't even know. But Blake Griffin, obviously that trade has not necessarily panned out. So Detroit now, not having the franchise player in Drummond anymore, the trade for the all-star and Blake Griffin not necessarily panning out, they needed a franchise player, a franchise point guard, and the 6'5" guard out of France and Killian Hayes, I think, was the perfect choice. If you listened to my last episode here at GSMC, I discussed at number 7, Detroit, don't mess it up, draft Killian Hayes if he is not available. That is exactly what I said, and they did exactly that. I was super happy to see that. They did exactly what they needed. They needed a franchise point guard, especially where the league is going today, similar to the whole Hornets situation, not getting Wiseman, getting Lamello Ball. The Detroit Pistons not working out with the two big men in Griffin and Drummond, now taking in a different direction, getting a franchise point guard in Killian Hayes. And should I remind you, this isn't just like a pass-first, defensive-minded guy. This is an offensive-minded guard, a score off of the dribble point guard. So this, a lefty too, so that's intriguing. But he can step back, shoot off the dribble. He's an offensive-minded guard overall. I think overall, like I said, for what they needed, it not working out with Drummond or now Blake Griffin. He's still on the roster. We'll see if they keep him along, trade him for other young pieces if possible. If a team competing needs a big, maybe they'll be desperate and trade for a guy like Blake Griffin. Or maybe he'll end up getting cut or bought out and go sign somewhere else. But either way, they're heading in the right direction where the league is. They don't go in the Hawks direction. They don't go with another center when they don't need one. Detroit makes the right decision with a franchise point guard in Killian Hayes, offensive-minded guy, can score off of the dribble. A perfect pick for Detroit overall. I love it. Overall, also for New York, I love the pick for New York. I think Obi Toppin fell right to them at number 8. As soon as we saw New York getting the 8th pick, I think even myself included, we were bashing on them, saying yet again they're bound for another bad season, another bad roster, not good for building, not set for building for the future as well for the 8th pick. Who are they going to get at number 8? Obi Toppin's going to go. Lamello Ball is going to go. Wiseman's going to go. Killian Hayes is going to be gone already as well. Who are they going to get? Maybe they can get Tyrese Halliburton or something like that. a good player who has a high ceiling potentially, but still, there were doubts on who they were going to be able to select with that number 8th pick. However, Obi Toppin seemingly drops right to them at number 8, a perfect pick for them. He's from New York even, so it's a great story for New York. So similar to Detroit, the Knicks get a player they are desperately needing. Obviously, Lamello, I think, would have been a better fit, but Obi Toppin, arguably the second best fit, second best player New York could have gotten. A great fit, an NBA ready guy. I want to take my second break of the show. When I come back, continue discussing New York, their pick with Obi Toppin, also Washington's pick, which I think is the steal of the draft. Okay, don't go anywhere, guys. I will be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, everybody, let's finish up discussing, like I said before the break, let's finish up discussing, the 2020 NBA draft, what I saw, the recap, and my reaction so far. Let's pick up right where we left off with the New York Knicks. A great story for them, getting the New York guy, Obi Toppin, fell right to them at number 8, seemingly. In my opinion, I was surprised to see him fall out of the top 5, to see Cleveland not select him, as well as Chicago even. And then after that, possibly even seeing, he wouldn't make sense for the Hawks, actually, when I think about it. But still, super surprising. He fell out of the top 5, Obi Toppin, fell right to New York. He seemed like good fits in both Chicago and Cleveland, but the Knicks got the guy. Apparently, it came out after they got Obi that he was the guy they wanted all along. He was the guy they were apparently close to moving up for. He's super explosive at the rim. He can shoot the 3 and spread the floor. He's a very good pick and pop guy. Almost shot 40% from the 3-point line. So, explosive around the rim. Is a pick and pop 3-point shooter. That's exactly where the NBA is heading. That's exactly the type of player you want. I'm super happy for the Knicks and the guy they got in, for Obi Toppin. A guy they got in Obi Toppin at number 8 in this year's NBA draft. Super surprised that he fell that far. Again, I thought he fit well in Cleveland, in Chicago even, maybe even in Detroit. I'm super happy Detroit ended up getting Killian Hayes, a very good selection for them. Playmaking, or an offensive-minded point guard, definitely. So super happy to see Detroit make that decision. But equally as happy for New York. Got exactly what they were looking for, and couldn't be happy for them. It seemed like they were bound for another so-so pick in this year's draft, but they got the guy they wanted in Obi Toppin, and hopefully going forward for the Knicks, things will be looking up. And finally, the final team, the final team I want to discuss today before moving on to the NBA's offseason is the Washington Wizards, because I think they might have gotten, they just might have gotten the steal of the draft at number 9. Denny Adviha, who again I projected to go number 4 overall, 4th overall to the Chicago Bulls. He drops all the way to 9th to the Washington Wizards. A great pick. I think he fits great. Putting him next to Wall and Beal, a playmaking forward, I think that makes nothing but sense. Wall is also an unselfish guard. Beal getting his own, obviously, right now, but Denny, I think, will be able to step into Washington and be able to contribute and help win right away. And also, if they decide to take the other route, the other way, if the whole Wall and Beal thing doesn't necessarily pan out, they have a potential building piece in Denny Adviha here. Again, a steal of the draft, in my opinion. I projected him to go number 4, maybe even higher than that. I saw the Warriors were super high on him, so I was thinking the Warriors might even trade down to select him. So a potential building piece if they take another route, Washington. But for right now, definitely a good fit to put with Beal and Wall. I think he is NBA ready and will help the Wizards win next season, or this season even. But overall, I should say with this year's NBA draft, I was pretty surprised with how it turned out. I didn't see. I saw more trades happening. However, we didn't see very many trades in the top 10. I saw teams like the Hawks, like the Warriors, trading out of their positions for veteran-like pieces. However, that was not the case. They make selections for the draft. We did see some selections or some trades in the last 10 or 12 so picks of the first round into the second round, obviously. But I expected more in the first round. But also related to the NBA draft, we saw Al Horford being traded to where Oklahoma City, I believe, for a couple of Oklahoma got a couple of first round picks, and then 76ers are getting rid of the Al Horford contract. That's a positive for them. But they also are getting rid of 2 picks, but they're receiving Danny Green. So a good trade for the 76ers. They're getting rid of that huge contract of Al Horford, also getting a shooter in Danny Green and a good player in Terrence Ferguson. So I like the trade for Philly. Also, OKC continue to add to their collection of draft picks. Also, Ricky Rubio is going back to Minnesota. Oklahoma got a first-round pick, and he is going back to Minnesota, adding to their assets. Oklahoma is obviously, and glad to see Ricky Rubio going back, helping D'Angelo Russell, the new guard in Anthony Edwards. So, and obviously the people of Minnesota love him as well. So I'm glad to see him going back to the Timberwolves. Overall, though, for you guys, I'm interested, for you guys listening here at GSMC, what do you all think was the biggest surprise of this year's NBA draft? And did you like the player that your team selected? Go to the comment section below. Let me know what team you like. Go on Twitter, go on Facebook. Let me know what team you like, what player you guys selected, and let me know what you thought of that pick. Also, let me know, if you guys will, what you think was the biggest surprise of this year's draft. Can't wait to see what you guys think. Overall, though, I was pretty surprised with this year's draft. Pretty content, however. The virtual draft was a big success, following in the NFL's footsteps. I think I do have to give the slight nod to the NFL as far as showmanship and as far as what we saw from their virtual draft. But still, I think the NBA followed in their footsteps and was a close second. Let's move on now and continue discussing, picking up where I left off on my last episode, discussing this year's NBA's off season. It's been a crazy off season so far. For the most part, it started on Monday, like I said, and we have seen a whole lot since Monday on noon. A whole lot of movement so far. A quick recap for you: the Bucks acquired. Apparently, there's a little bit of a question here. Apparently, Bogdanovich never agreed to the sign-in trade necessarily. Still has to work out terms with Milwaukee. So Bogdanovich just might not be going to Milwaukee after all, but overall, Milwaukee, it's looking like they may be getting Bogdanovich, and they did acquire Drew Holiday. So Milwaukee making moves, obviously getting Bogdanovich. Hopefully that move pays off. That would be big for the Bucks, getting a lethal three-point shooter. Jabari Parker for the Sacramento Kings. He is opting in to his contract. Okay, so he will be a Sacramento King once more for at least one more season, opting into his $6.5-7 million contract. Robert Covington, okay, Robert is heading to the Portland Trail Blazers, okay. Portland is getting defense and shooting at the forward position, exactly what they are needing. So happy to see them. They did have to give up a first round pick in order to get him, so that is kind of a lot. But Covington, his defense is unquestioned. He can knock down a 3-point shot. A great move overall for Portland. So I love to see that move. I like to see Jabari staying in Sacramento. I like to see, hopefully we can see Bogdanovich going to Milwaukee. Andre Drummond opting into his contract with Cleveland. Obviously we know why. It's $28 million. Obviously we know why he's opting in with Cleveland. And obviously even more is expected. Free agency kicks off on Friday. So make sure you're following us here, GSMC, the basketball podcast. Make sure you're following us on social media to make sure you're updated with everything that's going on in the world of basketball. But on Wednesday's draft, obviously Wednesday's draft going as planned, and not going as my plan, but going, as planned on Wednesday, 7 o'clock. Not too many moves were made. Golden State did not trade the number 2 pick, which I was hoping they were going to do. But overall, I was happy with what we saw on Wednesday night. We did see a decent amount of moves. Ricky Rubio's going back to Minnesota. I was happy to see this. So there were a handful of moves that were taking place. But overall, the biggest question mark right now, I think, in the world of basketball has got to be the whole James Harden, Russell Westbrook thing right now. Because James, weeks ago, obviously, or a week ago or so, I should say, came out and said, no, I know Russ wants out, but I want to stay here in Houston, toughen it out, keep building around me, continue to try to win as a Rocket. Then days later, he comes out and says, no, screw that, scratch that, I want out, I'm turning down your $50 million per year extension, trade me to the Brooklyn Nets. That happens just days later. So big question mark for me is what happens what transpired in those few days, or was that first report false, or did Harden say that, sleep on it and say, you know what, scratch that, I was wrong, I want out of this place. It comes out, maybe they were uncertain on the future of the franchise, didn't agree politically maybe with something, some things of the owner. So I'm not going to dive into that right now, but either way, I understand the move by James Harden here, but that has got to be the biggest question mark in basketball. Where will the former MVP, where were the 2 former MVPs in Houston and but obviously Houston has come out and said they have no rush. They feel no rush to trade the 2 guards. We know that's a load. They're trying to keep leverage, where we know now the leverage is clearly out of their hands. All teams know their 2 stars went out, one out. Once that happens, the teams lose leverage. I think this is simply kind of a leverage move by Houston, saying, hey, we're taking our time. We're not rushing. Yeah, okay, you have 2 unhappy MVPs who don't want to play for you. You're going to be trading them. You're looking for the best package possible. You're fronting right now. You are trying to keep your leverage, which you no longer have. So that's the biggest question mark right now, but it seems like the James Harden era in Houston is coming to an end. But Brooklyn, James, that's my biggest question. Brooklyn, you gotta go to Brooklyn and team up with another MVP, actually one who can win something in Kevin Durant, and then a guy like Kyrie Irving, which we'll see. I don't even know if Kyrie really wants a guy like James Harden coming and taking his possessions away, right? But either way, Brooklyn with KD, Kyrie, and James Harden, if they were able to put that trio together, man, that would be deadly. Fit is one thing. There is only one ball. But the talent on that roster is off the charts. Okay, obviously the talent level would drop off after, Kevin, Kyrie, and KD, or James Harden, but still, those 3 caliber players, obviously that's good enough to win a championship and multiple championships if chemistry works out, and that's not an issue. But Houston obviously is going to want a haul for the former MVP for the Nets. It said it would take Dinwiddie, LeVert, Jared Allen, and multiple first-round picks. So I think Houston can get a much better package that is kind of a crummy package in my opinion, kind of scraps. Kind of, if you can't get get anything, you trade him to Brooklyn for those picks and those players. But in my opinion, you should be able to get a Ben Simmons caliber guy for a guy like James Harden, who is still in his prime. However, unless they've lost that much leverage, which would be insane to me, but still, there are much better packages out there. So yes, that big three in Brooklyn is kind of far-fetched in my opinion, but those three caliber guys is scary. They wouldn't be able to play like their usual game plan, their usual styles of play. That would definitely have to change going forward. No more ISO ball so much. They would have to adapt to a Golden State-like game plan where the ball is constantly moving to an open shooter, moving to an open man. The ball movement, the ball is constantly being shared. So that would have to be the game plan in Brooklyn if they did get that trio of players together. But overall, I don't necessarily see it happening. I think Philly should and will get involved, especially because they just traded Al Horford, perhaps to clear up some cap space going forward for James Harden. We know how big the Al Horford contract was. We know how much Morey likes James Harden, how much time they've spent together. So that is apparent. I am guessing we will see them getting involved. I'm going to take a quick break, guys. When I come back, we will continue on. This is my final break. We'll wrap up the show, continuing on discussing how crazy this year's NBA's offseason has been. Don't go anywhere, guys. I'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Like I said before the break, let's continue on discussing the NBA offseason. I have some breaking news for myself, at least while I'm recording this, at least. Josh Richardson is reportedly going to the Mavericks. Seth Curry is going to the 76ers in a deal. Big blow for the Mavs. I think they just got a guy in Tyrell Terry, a big three-point shooter. So maybe after that move, they're like, hey, this is our new Seth Curry. Let's get off of this contract. They are getting a Josh Richardson contract, so maybe they're getting a more overall player in Richardson. So either way, Richardson and Curry, a swap for Dallas and the 76ers. Curry is now playing for his father-in-law in Doc Rivers. So an update for you guys, an update for myself as well. But let's continue on discussing the whole James Harden situation. I think Philly is going to be involved, should be involved, especially with Daryl Morey, but with the whole Bogdanovich thing as well. I should say really quickly. With the whole thing with Milwaukee and Bogdanovich, it is said that Bogdanovich is planning to enter a restricted free agency. So that means he can go talk to other teams, potentially get contracts in talks, but then Milwaukee or I guess Milwaukee or Sacramento has the right to match that contract. So basically, if Milwaukee is capable of signing the same contract, him to that same contract, he will still be a Milwaukee. So one thing or another, he could still end up being a Milwaukee Buck, but he still is planning to enter free agency. Not looking good for the Milwaukee Bucks right now. Still getting a guy like Drew Holiday, which is looking good for them. Drew is heading east. We know the Bucks gave up a haul, I think 3 first-round picks and 2 swaps for Drew Holiday and players. So Eric Bledsoe and George Hill. So they gave up a haul for the two-way guy. I think it's going to be hard to get more than that. It's going to be hard to outbid that. It makes sense why Golden State didn't end up getting a guy like that. Why maybe even, I don't want to say LA because I don't think they were ever in the running after that. But still, it makes sense why he ended up in Milwaukee because of that package, that haul that New Orleans got for him. So it's going to be hard to beat that. And now they obviously know they have a better chance at signing Giannis to that long-term Supermax deal. So they know that this is doing nothing but helping that. And they know that these first-round picks are super valuable if they do lose Giannis. So I hope they do know that. So I'm guessing, making the moves, they're thinking because they made this move to get Drew Holiday, more than likely Giannis is going to be extending. So they traded their draft away 3 first-rounders, 2 swaps, Bledsoe and Hill. New Orleans gets a haul for both Holiday and AD. Giannis finally has a capable all-star, in my opinion. Drew, also can help lighten the load for Giannis. It's going to be harder for teams to pack the paint and to force Milwaukee to lose games because they pack the paint. Now Giannis has a guy to kick out to at the three-point line. He's a guy to go create for himself outside of the perimeter in Drew Holiday. So he's also one of the best perimeter defenders and just in general defenders in the league. So you're pairing a defensive player in the year in Giannis with a guy like Drew Holiday. So 2 elite defenders there. Also, Holiday last year averaged 19 points, almost 7 assists, 35% from the 3-point line. So we know why he was a hot commodity. We know it took a haul. We know why it took a haul for Milwaukee to get him. It's going to be harder for teams to control the Bucks by blocking off the paint. Bogdanovich, if they can end up getting him through restricted free agency, if they can end up getting him, he's obviously a known 3-point sniper. If they can get both of those players, I think both of those moves are big for Milwaukee. Exactly what they needed to keep a guy like Giannis around. Perhaps that's exactly what they needed to keep Giannis around. I hope for their sake it was. Phoenix, on the other hand, Phoenix got their man Devin Booker some help. Finally, right? We've been looking similar to the whole Giannis thing. Giannis, he's going to need some help if you want to extend him. Same thing with Devin Booker in Phoenix. If you want to keep Devin in Phoenix, if you want to keep Booker in Phoenix, you got to surround him with talent, with capable talent. And Phoenix finally did so. The Suns have acquired Chris Paul. The OKC gets Ricky Rubio, who has been traded to Oklahoma City, to Minnesota, for 4 picks. But they got Oubre, Abel Nader, Ty Jerome, and a first-round pick in 2020 for Chris Paul. So Oklahoma City continues to add to their list of assets, and Phoenix, in my opinion, immediately becomes a top 5 or 6 team in the Western Conference. They get an all NBA point guard, a guy who proved himself last year, proved he still has plenty of time left in the league. In Chris Paul, he proved that last year in Oklahoma City. He can help Booker and Ayton win these close games. We saw them win. We saw them go 8-0 in the bubble. So we know this team has talent. They have potential. They have upside. Like I said, we saw them go 8-0 potentially. So we know how good they are. Both players now also are going to have the most wide open shot that they ever had in their careers. Chris Paul loves to share the ball. Also, he's going to have defenses gravitate towards him now. So both Booker and Ayton are going to have more open shots than ever. I'm super excited to see CP3 and Ayton in the pick and roll. I also think Booker is going to get some wide open threes that he's not necessarily used to getting. So super excited to see that trio of players, Booker, Ayton, and CP3. And like I said, Oklahoma City, they continue to add to their list, to their collection of assets. They now have have 24 picks in the next 6 years. So I think 16 of those are first round picks. So 24 picks in the next 6 years, if not more after the draft. I think that was a day or so when I got that stat. So at least 24 picks in the next 6 years, counting this past draft, in the 2020 draft, all the players they selected. So man, that is a lot. Sam Presti continues to make moves. Over half of those 24 are first round picks. And like I said, the last move I want to discuss, I think I said earlier in the show, the last move I want to discuss, or second to last move I should say, is Dennis Schroeder going to the Los Angeles Lakers. I think this still is somewhat in talk after the draft. Now I think it is now completely in play after Los Angeles selected the player for Oklahoma City. But still, Schroeder is going to Los Angeles. Again, Los Angeles is adding to Oklahoma City's collection, but the Lakers are also getting exactly what they need in return. Okay, they're getting an established and official third scoring option in Dennis Schroeder, and obviously that was the biggest question on this Laker team all season long. Who's the third option? Is it Kuzma? Is it Kentavious Caldwell-Pope? Is it Avery Bradley? Is it Danny Green? Who is going to be consistent? Is it Rajon Rondo? That's who it was in the postseason. So who is going to be the consistent third option for this Laker team? Now they officially have a guy to look to in Dennis Schroeder. Also, Schroeder, in my opinion, should have been the winner of the Sixth Man of the Year award. So in my opinion, snubbed of that. I think he should have won it over Montrezl Harrell. So now LA is getting a Sixth Man of the Year of their own, a Lou Will of their own. That was the big talk of LA, or of the Clippers, I'm sorry. They have 2 stars in the starting lineup and then 2 stars coming off the bench. Now LA, or the Lakers, I'm sorry, they're both LA. And the Lakers have 2 stars, superstars in the starting lineup, and then an official, a bona fide Sixth Man coming off the bench, an official third scoring option in Dennis Schroeder. So I think this move makes a whole lot of sense. It's exactly what Los Angeles needs. But my biggest question now is, are there any other moves coming forward? I know Rajon Rondo was basically said to be out of the Laker roster now, since they made the move for Schroeder, not being able to afford that anymore. Also, the role is going to be much smaller for Rondo. He's looking for a bigger role. The Lakers won't be having Rajon Rondo next season. So what other moves are going forward? What else does this mean for the Lakers? They still have Kyle Kuzma. Is that still a piece they plan on keeping around long term? Or is that a trade asset for maybe a guy like DeMar DeRozan, who is still on the San Antonio Spurs? Not sure. But either way, another question I have for LA is, what other moves, if any, are going forward? Also, for Houston, make sure you guys are keeping your eyes on the Houston situation. By the time you're listening to this, James Harden and Russell Westbrook could very well be on different teams. So keep your eye on that Houston situation. The draft went very well on Wednesday night. Hopefully everyone had a good time watching the virtual draft. I did very well. It didn't necessarily go as I expected. I expected more drafts and such, more movement, but I think it went very well. I thought it was a success. Free agency starts on Friday. Can't wait for that. Watch out for guys like Van Fleet, Serge Ibaka. So a lot going on, continuing to go on in the world of basketball. Again, can't wait to see what goes on Friday. We're still waiting to see what happens in Houston. Rumors going around about maybe Russell Westbrook and John Wall, the Wizards and Rockets, simply doing a swap for the 2 guards. Maybe Houston might want a little more to take on the injured John Wall, but a rumored Westbrook-John Wall trade, I don't necessarily understand this one. Neither team really wins, in my opinion. Both are kind of getting a rough situation. Westbrook and his recent play with the league, where the league is going, where he is going. I'm just not the biggest Westbrook guy. I never really have been. So not liking really what Washington would be getting in return, than what the Rockets would be getting in an injured injured or prior to injured John Wall, all the injury histories that Wall has, who knows what the Rockets are going to be getting. So I think this is kind of a lose-lose situation. Unless John Wall comes back better than ever in the injury, the Rockets might even be getting the better of the deal here, dare I say. Maybe I'm just that low on Russell Westbrook, I should say. So I don't really get this. I don't really expect this rumor to be really going anywhere. I think it's just talk, rumors, agents getting, rumors out there, getting people thinking that there are people interested in their client perhaps. But again, free agency starts on Friday, guys. Watch out for guys like Fred VanVleet. I think he's going to be a hot commodity in this year's free agency. Watch out for the New York Knicks. Maybe they have just enough cap room. They do have cap space. Watch out for maybe the Atlanta Hawks. Not sure. I think he will be a hot commodity, though, and more than likely, VanVleet will be out of Toronto. Also, Serge Ibaka, more than likely going to be out of Toronto. Where will Ibaka end up? I love him in a place like Golden State. Love him in a place like the Clippers, like a place like the Nets, even like a place like the Lakers, even. So I like him in multiple places. I think Ibaka will be a hot commodity. Robert Wood from the Pistons as well. I think he will be somewhat of a hot commodity. Teams will be wanting him. Watch out for the Celtics, perhaps. That's a team I've been rumored out here. Maybe we see Detroit overpay and keep him, but overall it's going to be a bidding war. I think whoever can pay the most for Robert Wood. Again, make sure you're following us on Twitter, the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Also, make sure you're following the man Adrian Wojnarowski, because he always knows first. That's who I get my information from, more than likely. So make sure you're following us. Make sure you're following Woj, and you will be just fine on Friday, on Thursday, whenever you're listening and looking for information. As long as you got us on your Twitter feed, you'll be just fine and you'll be up to date. So thank you all for your continued support here at the GSMC Basketball Podcast. That will be it for today's episode. Go like us on Facebook, on Twitter. Go leave us a comment, a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Again, what do you guys think was the biggest surprise in this year's draft? Did you like the pick that your team selected in this year's draft, the player that your team selected? And again, make sure you guys are keeping your eyes on that whole Houston situation. Who knows when James Harden, when Russell Westbrook will end up on other teams. I think trades are inevitable, and moves are bound to happen, especially on Friday. Watch out for VanVleet, Ibaka, Robert Wood. But again, thank you all for your continued support. I'll see you all next week on Monday. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.